After a long time, I am appearing before you with this video mode, or in the video mode rather. I shifted to the audio mode chiefly because of the problem with network and uploading. Because when I upload a video, the file is very large and it takes hours. But my main idea is to share as much information and idea as I can. But after a long time, I feel that I should once again go back to the video mode. In between, I had been a bit unwell also, and thanks a lot for your wishes that really encouraged me. I have also come to particularly address one question. An audience has, or a viewer has asked me to clarify the concept of Marxist theories on art or aesthetics or literature. I have already done a lot of videos on individual aspects of Marxist criticism, but after the question was asked, it occurred to me that in general, a broad idea of what Marxist criticism is or Marxist view of art or aesthetics is should be given. So I will go by the process of elimination. That is, I will say what Marxist theory of art or aesthetics is not, or Marxist idea of art or aesthetics is not. Two things are associated with literature or concept of good literature all over the world, more or less. One is aesthetic, the other is that of universality. Aesthetic or aesthetics implies that literature gives us aesthetic satisfaction, art gives us aesthetic satisfaction, that is, it appeals to our senses of beauty. Sometimes truth is also combined with that in that famous statement by that romantic poet that beauty is truth and truth is beauty, etc. So true art is, or great art is true and beautiful and is nothing to do with day-to-day world. It's in the domain of transcendence. That is one, aesthetics. The other thing is universality. Great arts, we believe, great pieces of literature, works of literature are universal, they're equally valid for all people across all times and places. I myself have said so while, interpreting Hamlet maybe or King Lear. And to a great extent, I personally believe in that personally. But now I'm defining the official position of Marxism largely on art and literature. So, Marxism or Marxist theories of literature stand firmly against these two views of art and literature. Firstly, there cannot be anything purely aesthetic. Literature and other forms of art are products of socio-political forces, socio-economic forces, especially economic forces, which you would know according to Marx and Engels and others, forms the basis of our society, our existence. Economy is the base, and art, literature, everything, superstructure. Think about building, foundation. Then we have one story, two story. Exactly that is the idea. So the base is money, economy, and then these are superstructures. So actually, literature is determined, or art is determined by the dominant ideologies of society. And then, secondly, for the very same reason, it cannot be universal also, because these are specific to places, peoples, times, and races. Nonetheless, Marx himself, he did not write any sustained critique or theory of art. He did not produce any theory about as such, but in a couple of places he had also indicated that literature, can have some kind of autonomy also apart from this base superstructure thing. So finally, this has led to two different kinds of Marxist critics. Actually, broadly speaking, there are many, many subdivisions, but I believe till now what I have said from this, especially my younger friends, have understood what the basic concept of Marxism apropos of literature or art is all about. That art is basically a political form, literature is a political form, or economic form, we can say. This is not transcendent, something above, like sublime. It's not that. But anyway, on the one hand, there are critics like George Lucas, who is very, very important. In fact, one of the key, if you ask me to name three or two key Marxist thinkers on art and literature, Lucas will have to be there. So, Lucas, for instance, or Goldman, for them, while they admit of the influence of economy and other material things, we can call it materialism on art and literature, for them still categories of aesthetics, and then we can say beauty, universality, these have some role to play. So we can call this a kind of a humanist trend against Marxist criticism. To the contrary, there are critics like Althusser, for instance, or the very contemporary one, Slavoj Žižek, we can say. For them, more or less, there is nothing apolitical in any work of art or any literature. The personal is the political. Everything is political. That is the basic thing. The canon, for instance, that is great works of literature. I have explained what canon is in my other videos. So for the traditionalists like Dr. Johnson or Arnold, or say Harold Bloom, who wrote the book The Western Canon, Books and Schools of the Ages, for them the canon is an aesthetic corpus, and it is primarily about great works of art. But for the Marxist critics, and also for post-colonial, feminist, queer and other critics, the canon is basically political corpus. Actually, Marxism, in a way, is the mother. Though Marx was a man, I'm using the family thing. I mean, so far as I know. So Marxism is the mother of all kinds of political readings. And Freud and psychoanalysis also. So Freud and Marx are in a way, you can say our father and mother. I mean, of those oppositional schools of readings who questioned aesthetics, truth, beauty, etc., and showed how we are conditioned in different ways. While Freud showed how we are conditioned from our psychological things, basically, Marx emphasized on the material conditions, the class that we belong to, most importantly, the economic group. And that is why, in one word, the very basic thing about Marxist idea or Marxist notion about art and literature is that it is a product of the very material conditions, and it can never go beyond that, albeit there may be some kind of autonomy, you know, that have been considered to, as I said, by some critics to the works of art and authors, but finally, it is bound material conditions. In the next step, questions also came about what kind of literature one should read by the Marxists, because that literature reflects social reality is one thing, but we need something more. That how can it change it? How can literature help change it? So there was this concepts of party literature, agitprop, agitation and propaganda, etc., which were adopted in places like Soviet Russia and other communist countries, and then works which did not follow the party line, especially the new works, were condemned and censured. That works, I mean, literary works must uphold the basic view of Marxism, that human history is not a unified history, but it's a history of class struggle. And then finally, we should have the role of the proletariat, a victory of the working class. So, at least officially, working class values and other things that have to be promoted. We have to go against the bourgeois values. At least officially, that was the position. Though George Orwell showed, his view that it's in theory one thing and in practice something else. Marxism, all animals are equal, but some are more equal than the others. And as you know, the thing is proverbially. And then, in fact, when I spoke about Althusser or Slavoj Žižek, I just missed one name. I mean, Terry Eggleton, who in a way, in one sentence that he said, I exactly don't remember now in which work he said that, but he has continued in the tradition. Maybe in his literary theory or works on Marxism and literature, he has categorically held, I will give the reference in the comment box if I find it, that it is in fact tautological to say that I say things like ideological literature, because there is no non-ideological literature, and then literature and ideology are one and the same thing. That is kind of extreme form of Marxism. Though we think him to be a literary critic, his idea has been to dismantle literature, or at least our values, traditional values associated with literature, very, very radically, demystifying English studies, the lies of English. By writing that chapter, he contributed to the fall of English and fall of literature also as a discipline. Maybe I'm speaking like Harold Bloom somewhat. With age, it is coming. And anyway, so basically, that is that. Now, from next time, I will again go back to the audio mode. It is already 12 minutes, and I think it will take about an hour or two for me to upload this from this part of the world. Thank you very much.